So let's get one thing clear. Statistics are boring. Well, to most people they are anyway. And it has been said you can use them to support any idea you wish to promote. I don't want to bore you with a bunch of numbers that don't mean anything to you. The purpose of this post is to take a look at the question many of you ask your realtor friends. How's the market doing? And then to give it some meaningful context. Today, information is readily available and the cost of housing has been at the forefront of our news feeds along with inflation and interest rates. So much so that it seems to have informed the opinions of both buyers and sellers to the point where our market is responding differently than it has in the past. Now that's my opinion. But let's get back to the question. If you're an investor asking that question, you typically want to know how your investments are doing. Has my investment increased in value or is it about to drop? If you're a first-time buyer, you might want to know if it's a good time to buy. Maybe you're wondering if you'll ever be able to buy a home since property values have increased so much recently. Or you're a homeowner whose life circumstances have changed and you need to downsize or you need more room. You want to know if it's a good time to sell. Can I maximize the value of my property today? The answer to all of these questions is the same. It could be yes. It might be no, and maybe might also be an option. Context is everything. World events also add context. According to Forbes.com, the COVID-19 pandemic has fundamentally changed the way real estate business is conducted. We saw changes and wished things to return to normal, but our new normal isn't the same as the old normal, and there have been other significant events. Do you remember Y2K or 9/11? Or 2008 financial crisis? How about the Gulf War? Those were some of the more recent noticeable events that could have affected your property. The point is, context matters, and your specific context matters as well. Now, I was born and raised in Abbotsford, so I've seen a lot of changes over the years. So for a few minutes, I want to go down memory lane and look at how our real estate market has changed over the last 50 or 60 years. So in the 60s, our family lived in a small bungalow on Mayfair Street. When my brother was born, the house was no longer big enough for a family of 6. So Mom and Dad sold the house for about $8,000. Sonia and I were newlyweds in 1976, and we built our first house on Sentinel Drive for about $45,000. In the late 1970s, our real estate market went crazy, and the price for that home probably went up to over $100,000. A steal today, right? Unfortunately, we had sold it a few years earlier for $48,000. I remember thinking how unlikely it was that we would ever be able to purchase another home because prices were so high. At the time, interest rates were also crazy. And the economics of the day caused a meltdown, and the price of that same property would have fallen to about $65,000. These may seem like small numbers by today's standards, but percentage-wise, the price doubled and then fell by about 35%. Maybe that sounds reminiscent of our most recent volatile market. 1984 was the year I got into real estate, and I remember our market remaining flat for several years as the interest rates began to fall from highs of 21% to 15%, then to 12%, and then to under 9%. And in 1989, we began to see prices rise. By the fall, they were going up about $10,000 per month. Our 1976 house on Sentinel Drive was probably worth about $150,000 at this time, but our supply of listings dried right up, making for a difficult market to begin in 1990. I remember I used to count the listings, and I was counting the listings in our catalog. That could be another topic, how technology has changed the way the realtor does business. You never even heard of a catalog. We had 270 houses for sale at the end of 1989. The interest rates took a bit of a bump I think they bumped up about half a point. And we noticed a problem because everyone had seen prices escalate quickly over the previous 5 months, and the expectations of the sellers exceeded the buyers' expectations. So sales dropped off and inventory levels tripled. By the fall, these factors, they all adjusted and a more normal time continued for a while. So these were times of tremendous growth in Abbotsford, and we saw a large influx of people into our area. Looking back like this and seeing the growth, it might be easy to think that it was all good. And really, considering the larger context, it was. What is easy to miss is the in the heat of the moment times and the current context of how people felt going through it. I mentioned 9/11 earlier, a time when there was a great deal of uncertainty and our market went on hold for a time. People were glued to what was happening in the Persian Gulf, and buying and selling real estate was put on hold for a while. But we adjusted. Or in 2008, when the world economy took a beating, our market went on hold for a while again, and we experienced a price adjustment of about 8 to 10% over a couple of years. There was a marked change in the activity in our real estate market in both instances. Sales dropped as people seemed to be in a state of shock for a while, wondering what would come next and if life would ever be the same again. In March 2020, many thought the end had come, and real estate activity plummeted. You know what? After a couple of months, we realized that life would continue. Things were different, but people still needed to make decisions about their housing that made sense in their circumstances and context. We figured it out. The same holds true for the more recent change. Interest rates began to rise. Putin invaded Ukraine, and other things made life a bit uncertain. Again, it feels like our market has been on a roller coaster ride. There have been those who will predict the real estate bubble's burst, and those who believe it would only continue to grow. Availability and affordability and what drives them will remain significant issues for us to work on, and they will be a part of the greater context. Our homeless crisis has also been impacted, and hopefully we will come up with some answers there as well. So to answer your question, how is the real estate market doing? The answer is, it depends. What's your perspective? What's your context? I can tell you the long context says the market is doing very well. Do you remember my family home on Mayfair? The one mom and dad sold for about $8,000 in 1964. 2 years ago, it sold for $1,315,000. Crazy, right? The fact it was now in a redeveloping area really made a difference. You know, something our Sentinel house didn't enjoy quite so much. But all things considered, selling for $850,000 in 2022 is still a pretty good return on the original investment of $45,000. Looking back, I can easily say that we should have kept more of our properties, but our context at the time didn't allow that to occur. The same as your current context means you might need to make different decisions. Statistics matter, but they count more when considered in your current contextual environment. If I can be of any help to you in your current context, let me know. I'm here to help, and thanks for listening.